Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. My name is Elizabeth McKeon, and I'm a board-certified registered nurse in behavioral health as well as addiction and recovery. I am committed to reshaping the dialogue on mental health and substance use disorder, as well as changing stigma and language in and around substance use disorder. For the past decade, I've focused on this cause, inspired by the struggles in my own hometown, witnessing locals grappling with homelessness, mental health crises, methamphetamine labs, heroin overdoses, which now I think we all realize there is no such thing as heroin anymore. It's all fentanyl. This has all fueled my dedication to this cause, and I decided that we needed a space where we could talk about the separateness of mental health and substance use disorder and bring it into one space. I want to help erase stigma and craft conversations that are going to help educate everybody. On the Clearly Well podcast, I'm going to talk, listen, and be the voice for those without one. Clearly Well podcast will bring mental health and substance use disorder together into one space where every voice can be heard, regardless of fame, regardless of class. In this inaugural podcast, I delve into the journey to podcasting. My passion for mental health and substance use disorder emerged early in my nursing career. I worked in a mental health facility in a border community in Las Cruces, New Mexico. It was there that I really witnessed the struggles of homelessness and substance use disorder and unaddressed mental health issues, lack of access to care. It was almost impossible for us to have a safe discharge plan for a lot of my patients. I can remember one time I had to release a patient to a bridge because this person had no home. This is a story that I'm seeing now in the areas that I live in my hometown. Join me as I share pivotal moments that fuel my commitment to giving these individuals a voice. Listen in as the guests share their personal struggles with mental health issues and those that are in recovery. Family members, friends who've lost a loved one to overdose. I'll also be interviewing professionals in the industry and listening to their experiences. So listen in to the Clearly Well podcast, because I have a mission to transform the conversation around mental health and substance use disorder by breaking stigma and uniting these crucial topics into one space. Join me as I address the challenges faced by these individuals, and remember, everyone's voice matters. So as I wrap up today's introductory podcast, I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearly Well is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media. So hey guys, welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. So excited to be here today, and I have some special announcements after the Did You Know? So, did you know that smoking marijuana can cause inflammation after a bronchial infection by directly irritating the bronchial airways with its smoke, leading to increased mucus production, impaired immune function to the lungs, and potential damage to the lung tissue. It also hinders the body's ability to heal from initial infection, potentially prolonging inflammation and symptoms like coughing and wheezing. So keep in mind, guys, I am a nurse, and I have a husband who has asthma, and I'm telling you right now that anytime we've been subjected, I'll give you an example. We just went to the Formula One race in Las Vegas, and we were both subjected to a lot of cigarette smoke. We both came home sick, and I do believe it was direct irritation from the chemicals in the smoke that we inhaled. And yes, that was tobacco smoke, but that was also marijuana smoke, guys, because in Las Vegas, there is a lot of marijuana smoke going on. I'm just going to let you guys know for sure. So marijuana smoke can stimulate the production of mucus in the airways and trap bacteria, which further irritates the inflamed bronchial lining. Believe it or not, it also suppresses the immune system. That makes it harder for the body to fight off infection, which can also prolong any inflammation and sickness that you have going on in your body, whether that is COVID, whether that is the flu, whether that is pneumonia, whereas that is the new impending pneumovirus. So just keep in mind, guys, like this can totally keep you guys from getting better. And I know at the end of the day, we're all sitting here trying to say, like, the folks that I have on this interview are all in recovery mostly. And at the end of the day, like, sometimes people in recovery still smoke marijuana because that is something that is prescribed to help with depression and anxiety and other issues. So I have no judgment here. You guys know I don't sit in judgment of anything. At the end of the day, I do want to let you guys know that if you have COPD or asthma or any lung issues, that if you are smoking marijuana, you are going to be at risk for prolonged sickness and otherwise like prolonged issues with your immune system, etc. So wrapping up, that is today's Did You Know? And so I want to say hi and welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Tim Snyder from the Talking Trash podcast. So excited, Tim. Oh my gosh.
Thank you very much.
I think some of you have like totally seen us kind of swapping back and forth with some banter and some cute, he does these cute cartoons of me, guys. Like, I don't even know. They don't look anything like me. I am not a cute girl. Like, these pictures are just super cute. And I'm like, oh, thanks.
You're very cute.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, we like to spice it up a little bit, put a fun spin on things. Because one thing about recovery is not a lot of laughter. You know, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering.
For sure.
And I've been blessed with gifts, so I'm using them to give back. Because you can only keep what you have by giving it away.
Sorry, guys, I just like totally hit my mic and it made a big ding.
Sorry.
And so those are the things I like to keep in when we do those little bloopers. Yeah. I love that. So, all right. Well, welcome, Tim, and thank you. And we love your talents, especially over here on Clearly Well. You help us and you teach us and you help us get better, and we appreciate you. And I wanted to bring you on. I mean, I know you kind of brought me on and onto your podcast, which was just kind of like some informational stuff about me with Healthy Georgia and kind of what I do and whatnot. But you and I came together in almost like a God moment in that your dad reached out to someone else who reached out to me for Narcan.
Yeah.
And I went to the place to deliver the Narcan and no one was there.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you know this.
I don't.
Okay. So what happened was I called your dad and I said, I have your Narcan. And he said, I'm going to cough. Sorry. Excuse me. He's like, well, I live far from where you are. And I said, give me the address. And I typed it in. It was 4 miles. And I said, Tim, who is also your dad, named Tim. Yeah. I said, I'm 4 miles away. I can come to you.
Wow.
So I brought him directly the Narcan. And then he said, you know, I have a son who does a podcast about recovery. And I said, I would love to meet him. And he's here. I said, oh my God.
I remember that.
So that's sure. Crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know, we came together on a Narcan delivery, which is like, so I think it's crazy that you don't know that's how we came together. But anyway, that's how it happened.
Yeah. Well, he loves you. He talks about you like you're his best friend. So.
Okay. Well, I'll take that. Yeah. And I'll take you being another good friend.
No, of course.
So I wanted to bring you on today because you have a powerful story and I only know bits and pieces of it. And I think it's important to tell our listeners that I have a non-scripted podcast. Like, I don't do anything pre-scripted. We don't plan anything. We talk, we banter. My did you knows are not I like basically walk into the studio and do a did you know. Like, that's how it is. Like, I don't plan anything. And so I made it kind of like a goal of mine not to know the story of the people that come into here. So I know bits and pieces about like things that have happened to you, but I certainly don't know your story. And so I'm just going to go ahead and prepare you for the way that I do the journey of the person in the other chair. And that is that we are going to go way back,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to go to your childhood, and we're just going to kind of walk through and kind of figure out how you got to, that place of I'm in an addicted space and I've got mental health, and these things aren't being addressed. And so I just want to go ahead and prepare you that that's kind of how I roll with this podcast.
That's a good way to go.
All right, well, let's go way back.
Well, I mean, if I had to, I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a nice Christmases, good vacations. I mean, a lot of people in recovery who, they've had trauma, they've had abuse, and that's why they ended up using, and PTSD and all that. I don't have that, and for a while I felt bad. Like, well, what makes me tick? Why am I an addict? And I had nice things. I had a very weird childhood, but I was very well taken care of. We're a middle class family.
All right, I'm gonna stop you because you used the word weird in your childhood.
Okay.
So there has to be something in your childhood that makes you say that. Yeah. And I also know that just because you're raised, because I was also raised in a middle class family, and actually up middle to upper class family.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't want to dumb that down. For me, and if you feel the same way, that's great. But at the end of the day, like, my parents definitely had issues, and we had nice things, and we did vacations and all of that. But I can really place back in my childhood definite things that happened to me when I was growing up that weren't okay.
Yeah.
And I think they have affected me as an adult. I think it affected the prolongation of me coming to a profession in my life.
Yeah, sure.
Because I certainly didn't start out as a nurse. So I'm not going to make this about me, but that's why I wanted to pause you there, because middle class, upper class, like, that doesn't mean anything,
right.
And it doesn't.
I don't now, but back.
But let's go back.
Ago,
you said you used the word weird, so let's go back.
So for sure, I mean, I had a nice family. Things were okay. But when I say weird, is I guess we can. I played hockey. I did my thing in my teenage years. Had friends, had girlfriend. But then when I was 17 years old, I blew my knee out playing hockey. So computers were a big thing back then, just coming out. So I was laid up for a while, and I taught myself how to build websites and make graphics and things like that. And what ended up happening was we were getting a new hockey team in town in Trenton, New Jersey. And I was all excited about that. And I built a website, as a fan site for the team. And they found me and they hired me to do that for them. So I was hired by a professional hockey team at 16 years old. That's a little much for a 16-year-old, but it looked like a great thing when it was happening. Everybody was excited. Everybody loved it. It resulted in me being 16 years old in a press box with 8,000 people below me waiting for me to play music or a video clip or blow the goal horn when they score or whatever. And that was 16 years old. So, very early, at 17, I got my own apartment. I don't know how to do dishes at this point. I don't know how to do laundry. And I have my own apartment. I'm like, okay, what do we do now? I'm working for this team. I'm a big shot. And the pressure was it was overwhelming, but it was rewarding. It was fun. But it was, at the end of the day, I'm a little kid doing 10 different adult jobs. And it took a toll on me. And I ended up, I'll never forget the first time I felt high. I was on the catwalk in the arena with 8,000 people below me, and I took a tramadol that was given to me for my shoulder from my doctor, and I remember walking back to the press box, feeling my head come off my body, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is my thing.
And I'm going to stop you right there, guys. Tramadol does hit the opioid receptor in the brain. However, it is not an opioid, and it is not an addictive. To this day, it is not stated as an addictive drug. With that said, because it does hit the opioid receptor in the brain, it does give you a little bit of that feeling that an opioid will give you. So I just wanted to kind of elaborate
absolutely.
on what you're saying about that tramadol.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to give our listeners fear about taking a tramadol, because that is the alternate that we do prescribe for an opioid that is a non-addictive pain medication.
Yeah, for sure. It's not something to be afraid of. It's great for pain, honestly. It's a great alternative to Percocet and other opioids. But for me, it was just that thing that I knew it. People talk about with alcohol, they drank it and they're comfortable in their own skin all of a sudden. Maybe that would have been me, but for me, it ended up being pills at first. So now I'm 17. I smoked pot for 17 years old to 38 years old. So to elaborate on your point there, that was never like a big deal in my mind. Before you know it, I'm doing cocaine. I'm, not full blown addicted to where I go into withdrawal, but like I'm in my apartment. Everything's a mess. I'm.
So let's go back. You said, so now I'm doing cocaine. So there had to be some transition from the time that you took a tramadol and you said, oh, I had my first moment. I'll never forget it.
Yep.
But what would have caused you to, did you seek out the cocaine, or was it being used in an environment where you just happened to be there?
Well, I was the only guy with an apartment. We're all talking 17-year-old kids and nowhere to go. So, but what really transitioned was ecstasy. Now that was a huge thing back in 1998. Was
really
ecstasy was just coming out, and it was not so much MDMA, but it was very psychotropic. Like you would trip on ecstasy, and that's really how I transitioned into pill use. But ecstasy, cocaine. Now I broke the barrier down. Now I've done drugs. My entire teenage years to 16 years old, I was vehemently against drugs. I was afraid of them. I could never. If you talked to 16-year-old Tim and asked him if he was going to get high on drugs, he would have looked in your face and said, "No way, I'm against it." And that's crazy looking back now, because by 18 I was full into heroin. I have a kid on the way now with my girlfriend. Like I said, I jumped stages way too fast. So by 19 years old, I have a kid on the way, and I think the world is ending. I think I have completely failed at life, and I rested on that, and kind of it was my excuse. Oh, poor me. I ended up so I transitioned to a few years of getting sober and family helping me and all that, and it got to a point where they had to get rid of me. They had to send me to a rehab. Now, I wish the things available today were available back then, but nobody knew what to do with me. Nobody knew about detox or rehabs or whatever. So they found a Christian rehab place. It was more of a work camp, but they sent me up there at 18 years old on a bus to Bangor, Maine. And
wow. Okay, that just Bangor, Maine just makes me think Stephen King. Sorry,
I had
to say that.
We went to his house.
Oh wow!
It was a Christian work camp. I remember going up there, and here's the crazy part: the night before they're shipping me out, everybody's pissed off at me. The night before they're shipping me off, I had OxyContin and Xanax. So much of it, because I'll be honest, I was writing my own prescriptions back in 1998. So like, I should be just getting out of jail now, but I'm here. So, I had a sock with OxyContin in it, so much, 80 milligram OxyContin, probably 50 of them, and a ton of Xanax. And I put it all in a sock. I threw it under my dresser, and my mom comes in and just kind of looks around and just knows it's there. Gets on her knees, finds it, and takes it. So that would have been death for me. I would have died from an overdose there.
Oh wow!
So they sent me to Maine, and it was crazy. 6 months hard labor. I detoxed digging a hole. It was rough, but it's what I needed at that time. I went up there a baby, a little kid, and I came back a man. So I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome. So is that I'm going to say, is that like detox number one?
Mm-hmm. So what that did is I came back from Maine, and all right, so I have this cookie cutter thing. I have a kid. I have to raise a kid. I have to buy a house. I have to have another kid. And I did all that. And I was sober for a good 5 years, and I built a life, and I had jobs, and I had 2 kids, and things looked great on the inside. But my disease was in the parking lot doing push-ups. It was always there. It was untreated. And, eventually I start getting money, and I'll take a Percocet here and there. I'll just, I'll dabble. And
right.
like that ends great, right?
Can
Can I if you've listened to my podcast, you know that I always try to go back.
Sure.
So I feel like we've jumped way ahead, and we have gone from like, I just tried that one tramadol, then I, did this, then I went to rehab. Now I've got a family, I've got 2 kids and a wife, and I'm making money and I'm dabbling. I'm trying, and this is something I do in every podcast, I'm trying to get to the place that there was something unmet in your life. There was something going on in your early childhood, teenage years, something that wasn't being met for you. And you and I have talked about this, and we talk about it on your podcast. I definitely talk about it on my podcast. You cannot say, like, I am a person who is recovered if you never identified what was the thing that caused you to get there in the first place.
Sure.
There's something unmet. There's something going on. And for me, like with you, I want to try to get to or find out, like, what was it? What was going on? Is that, I can say, like, I was a daddy's girl, right? Like, sometimes there was unmet issues there. Is there something in your childhood that you could say with mother or with dad, or that was not being met for you, that would have caused you to also be like, okay, I'm moving out, I'm getting an apartment? Like, to me, there's definitely a lapse there in your story. I love you.
No,
you
right,
know this.
Right.
Like, my parents would have been like, no, you're not moving out. I'm sorry. Like, you can slow your roll. You're not moving out on your own. I don't care what kind of money you're making. You're going to stay right here at home. And actually, probably you're not taking that job. That's the kind of parents I had. They were very controlling.
My father wasn't around a lot, and that doesn't mean he was a bad guy, but he worked.
No.
He was a nurse anesthetist, and he pulled call, and he was just never around. So I was a mama's boy, basically. But I think that one of the biggest problems with my childhood was they had me very late. So I didn't have cousins or friends. My brother was an adult, kind of. My sister was definitely an adult, and I'm just this baby kid.
With older parents.
Yeah, and I didn't know where I fit in the world. I hated everything. I hated preschool. I can go back to preschool. I'm the only kid that didn't want to stay. It was a big deal. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't have a father figure, per se. He's a great man. He provided for us. He did everything he could, but he wasn't around. There's no...
Yeah, no, I get it. My mother worked for the government, and she was never around. Yeah. So I that's how I became a daddy's girl. And then Daddy was a coach and a teacher, and he was our high school psychologist. So he took care of a lot of other folks, right? Like, so I get that. Like, when I feel like I was a little bit like that 80s kid who was it called latchkey?
Yep.
I was definitely the latchkey kid. So I can understand, like, you were just feeling like, I'm out there on my own. I'm going to figure it out. So there's definitely, I think, I can see that, because I can identify in my own right, like that some of that went on with me as well. And so I think you're jumping across that, and of course you never want to put your parents down, because they do the best job that they do with the cards that they're dealt, right?
Yeah.
So I get that too.
Well, not all do, though. You know what I mean? A lot of kids, a lot of people in recovery, a lot of people that I know, they have bad childhoods.
No, they do.
They were molested.
But then you feel bad, right?
Exactly.
Like, you're like, I don't want to say, because I had like this really great upbringing and I had nice things. But Tim, at the end of the day, if needs weren't met, they weren't met.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean,
so
I was a little
that's
kid.
okay. Your brain is forming.
Yeah.
And men, let's face it, no offense, guys, but like at the end of the day, men specifically have got to have the mother, father. I don't even know why I pick you guys apart as saying that. It's everybody has to have their needs met, period.
Yeah.
But men specifically are set out in society to be specific to how they're laid out in their life to take care of others.
Yep.
And if maybe your needs weren't met, then did you have the toolbox to be able to fulfill that later in life? It's just something to think about.
That's a great point. I mean, my childhood defines me. Like, I was an addict way before I picked up a drug. Whatever it was, Nintendo, whatever. I was addicted to it. I had a Tim problem back then, and I didn't recognize that till I was 40 years old. So that's why I jump ahead so quickly, because
Yeah, for me it was food.
Yeah.
I had the food issue early in life because my mom restricted me. I was born a large girl, like I was like a 10-pound bouncing baby 2-year-old, and so like my mom put me on a diet like the minute I was born.
Yeah.
You know, and so then my whole life it was like, don't eat that, don't touch that, like, and she's a tiny lady and I'm not, and I'm, for those of you who have never seen me or don't know, like I'm like 5'10" and weigh like 160 pounds, so you know I'm not like a tiny girl. And I can remember my grandmother saying to me when I was 12, "You could be a plus size model." Okay, come on. It was because I was the tallest girl in my school, right? Yeah. So for you, you know, it is what it is. For you too, like you are struggling with possibly like a little bit raised. I don't want to say raised by wolves is rough because you weren't raised by wolves, but you were definitely a sign of the times.
I was struggling to find my identity for sure back then. I didn't know who I was, didn't know what I was. I didn't have anything to really emulate. I had a big brother that tickled me till I pissed my pants. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have like these friends, and I didn't play t-ball, and I never acknowledge it because woe is me. Like in recovery, and the people that I know, 80% of them have like this childhood trauma, and I don't, and that's how I feel. But like,
were you emo?
No, I wasn't.
No. Okay.
I don't know what I was. So if you want to like,
but you weren't like traditional popular either.
No, not at all. And I was short. I'm a little guy, like.
I don't identify you as short.
Well, I mean,
you're like close to my height.
I'm like 5'8" on with platforms on. But yeah, I mean, like back then I was.
Short guys in America are mad at you right now.
Oh yeah,
just
for
saying.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. No, I it's okay because like I'm okay with myself now, but like my entire life I didn't fit in my own skin. I just never did. I had this complex about me. Never knew why I felt the way I felt. I had anxiety, depression, bipolar, whatever at 10 years old. I didn't realize that. You don't really treat that stuff at 10 years old. You throw Adderall at the kid.
Yeah, not then especially. Like, I don't know. I feel like we over-prescribe to youth currently, and I'm not a proponent of it. I won't be doing it in my practice for sure.
Maybe I needed therapy. Maybe I needed something, not just Adderall thrown at me.
Yeah, but back then, like, therapy wasn't even talked about, and mental health wasn't talked about. Right. And if anything, it was actually not talked about.
It was a stigma back then.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah. Yep. So, like, I had this childhood where I was an addict to everything. So when hockey came into the world, that was my thing. Got it. I'm gonna be addicted to hockey now. And I played hockey and I watched hockey, and that was my first real addiction. And then this thing comes up where I'm working for this hockey team. That was my next addiction. And there was just addiction after addiction after addiction. Some of it was okay addiction, workaholic, like. It's not great, but you're doing something positive.
Yeah.
So it's looked upon like it's okay. You're a workaholic.
He has a good work ethic, right?
Well, yeah. Yep. For sure. And I don't feel. I remember feeling comfortable when I used drugs. And being so against drugs, it was crazy to me. So I smoked pot for years, and it was illegal back then, so it was like it was a rush. You get that rush getting drugs and finding them, and even going to get them if you get kind of high prior to that because it's exciting. So
yeah. And then is there a high associated with hiding it from others? So
for years I was afraid of being exposed, especially with the weed. Like if I smoked weed, my eyes are red, and it's like the cat that ate the canary. You can smell it right on me. So I had this need to, I don't know, run around and get the drugs. It wasn't always. I mean, I got clean, and I didn't identify myself with anything. I wouldn't go to meetings. In 1999, 2000. It was a different world. The OxyContin was starting to flow. It was very easy to make a bad choice and have it. Like, we can make such a bad choice, a little bad choice, that it happens so quickly, and it turns into this nightmare. And and you can't fix it. It's like there's the road to fixing it is hard, and I was in that situation for a long time, and I had the fear of being exposed. That was my biggest fear, and for 15 years I raised a family, and my kids are great. And
okay, so now we're back to you are with the 2 kids and the wife, and you're 5 years in sober. And when you say I'm 5 years in sober, are you smoking pot though?
Probably.
No.
My wife always did.
Oh, okay.
I was a driver, so I couldn't smoke weed. No,
Okay.
I didn't smoke
I got
pot.
you.
But once I stopped being a driver, I don't know, 26 years old, whatever, I got into IT, and I could smoke pot again. So now pot's, and it's illegal, and and me and my wife always smoked pot. And looking back on it, I didn't really like the way it made me feel. It was like a gateway drug, like everybody says.
They do say that. Like I know a lot of people that smoke marijuana or have like a health card for marijuana that don't do anything else.
Yep.
Like, so I think that gateway term is definitely relevant to the chemistry makeup of the person.
Sure.
And also like what they're at risk for.
Yeah.
And past use. And so I don't know what I think about that. I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. I don't want to ugly email.
I don't like the word triggers. I don't really like the word gateway. But for me, it kind of rang true. But everybody's different. You know what I mean? But it
sounds to me like anything was a gateway. I mean, you talk about like I took a tramadol and I had like this amazing feeling, and yet I could take a tramadol right now and I'm not going to have any type of feeling on the tramadol, that it doesn't affect me any type of way. However, I cannot take things like Benadryl. I cannot take opioids. They like have an allergic reaction to opioids. And then something like a Benadryl will knock me out for 2 days.
That's crazy.
So for you, like a tramadol that doesn't bother me at all gave you a gateway feeling, like to do something else.
I never achieved what I was looking for. It was an endless pit. Even I went as bad as doing heroin. That's like the worst thing I can think of.
Was that injectable?
I didn't start shooting heroin until I was 38, 39 years old after my car accident.
Okay. Well, we're jumping ahead.
Yeah, but like when I was 19, we're talking when I first started doing drugs and cocaine and stuff, it was, I never injected it. I sniffed it, snorted it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a guy, first episode, season 1, Avery, that talked about, like, he always justified saying like, but at least I don't do that. At least I don't inject. He always like basically said that he held himself to a higher standard and looked down on others because he wasn't where they are.
Yep.
Did you do that? Was that something that you kind of did as well?
Sure. I mean, I compared myself for my own self-esteem. I just wanted to feel like I was okay. It was okay to do these drugs as long as I don't do that. That's a problem. But it ended up with me with a needle in my arm on the streets of Kensington in Philadelphia, dying, literally dying.
I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, it's part of my story.
No, it is. And
important.
how old were you when that happened?
When that happened, it was after my divorce. I was 38, 39 years old.
So okay, now I'm going to go back. So we got 2 kids, a wife. We're doing well. We've had 5 years of sobriety. I don't want to jump ahead to 39 yet.
No,
what happened to the marriage?
So, I was married for 13 years. What happened at like 25, 26, I became an IT guy. I got off the road. So now, I guess pot's a thing. Not really, but like once I got off the road, like 25, 26 years old, I started dabbling again because Oxycontin is everywhere. It's easy to get. My wife smokes pot. It's like kind of like loosey-goosey here. It's like nobody has any standards to follow. So now I have this thing where like what actually happened was I started doing graphics for professional sports teams, turning back on that hockey thing.
Yeah.
And
was that the Philadelphia Flyers?
No, they were called the Trenton Titans.
Okay.
It was great. It was a minor league team.
No, I love it.
So I did work for the Flyers. This business I created, we needed more money. Obviously, everybody does raising kids at that age. And I started doing this business where I was making graphics for pro sports teams. I worked with the Falcons, the 49ers,
Gosh, no
everybody.
wonder you make cute pictures of me.
Well, that's it's not hard to make cute pictures of you. You're very cute.
You're so cute.
No, so like I became good at graphics. Like if we can dial back to 19, 18 years old, I was exposed to this thing and I was just learning as I went. I taught myself how to do graphics. I taught myself how to get, cut up videos and make music and all this stuff for the hockey team. So I had this skill. So I stopped being a driver. I started doing IT, right? So now I'm sitting around all day on the computer. And I ended up making this business for sports teams, and I loved it. And what that did was it brought in extra revenue that I was in control of. So, I had this money in my pocket. Sure, I'd make $1,000 on a team. I'd give $800 into our bank account. I got $200 of spending money that I can go get drugs with. So now I'm dabbling. I think it's okay. I'm not. What that was, it was using withdrawal, and that went on for a good, 7-8 years, until and then my marriage fell apart, obviously, and I don't regret anything, but I certainly would have changed some of those choices. I can mark every holiday, whether I was high, whether I was detoxed, whether I was in withdrawal. It was rough. It wasn't a fun life to live, and that's where the fear of exposure came from.
Yeah.
I had to hide it from everybody, and obviously, if I'm doing that, I'm not going to do a good job of hiding it. It's going to come out, and my wife accused me a bunch of times, and I denied. I'm not doing anything wrong. And then what happened was my brother-in-law dropped dead at 43 years old.
Oh no.
So we take in.
And what did he die of?
Heart disease, I guess.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know.
He had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, we're moving from our little happy home to a big house where we can take in my brother-in-law's wife or my sister-in-law and her daughter. So we're all a big happy family. And that was a nightmare. So, I never had control over my own life. I was always a passenger watching it happen. And the only thing I had control of was getting high. That's the only escape I have. Because other than that, I hate being alive. I hate the sunshine. I don't sleep. Like, all these things are fixed when I'm high.
Right. So literally, I hear you saying, like, I was just a passenger in my own life. So did you feel as though, like, what was happening with the death of your brother-in-law, like, created an entire atmosphere of her family's life became your life, and you had no say?
Nope.
Yeah, that would be hard. I do feel like, that's a whole nother topic. But at the end of the day, you can love somebody, and I'll give you an example. I'll use my own situation. My daughter and her husband came home. They just got married in August. They came home for the holidays, and they stayed with us for 2 straight weeks. 2 straight weeks. You love your child. You love the husband. You love them with all your heart. But like after 2 weeks, okay, go back to New Jersey. Love you guys. Like can't wait to see you next time.
Yeah.
But so imagine if the 2 weeks was just a lifetime.
Yeah. It was a year. It went from November 1st to November 1st.
Yeah.
So after that, me and my wife, we're kind of reeling after that. It was a nightmare. So, like, me and her aren't on great terms. And in that time period, I knew I was going to be exposed because I had all these eyes on me. And I found Suboxone. And, that was a lifesaver for a while until my wife found it in my wallet. And that sparked the whole divorce. So
Suboxone, were you abusing Suboxone, or you were using Suboxone for sobriety?
Yep. And
so let me just, for our listeners, we talk about medication-assisted treatment for addiction, and Suboxone is a brand name for buprenorphine, which is medication-assisted treatment to be able to partially block the mu receptor in the brain and help a person who's trying to achieve recovery, sustain recovery. Yep. And so congratulations that you had gone that route.
Well, I was getting them off the street and I was hiding it. So it wasn't the right way to do it.
It wasn't like the legit way to get it.
Right. But it was all new to me. I was trying to figure it out. And, if if I took 2 or 3, I would have this feeling of like, I don't, not in euphoria, but it was okay. It gave me energy, and that was that fear of exposure. I'm trying to do the right thing, but I'm trying to hide it. The outside was never what was going on the inside. It was always this thing that I have on my shoulder or weighing me down, and I didn't get on Suboxone officially till after me and my wife split up.
So you actually went into treatment then?
I didn't go into treatment until I got a DUI, and everything fell apart. It was the day after Thanksgiving.
All right, I'm making you rush ahead. Go back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go back. Go back to wife found it in your wallet.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go there, and then we'll go into the full treatment.
It was ugly. It just I was always being accused. I was always hiding it, and that's a miserable life to live.
Yeah.
Going into withdrawal. A lot of people went into withdrawal once and then they got clean, and that was it. I was in withdrawal or high for a decade, and it sucked. It was not fun at all. So yeah, it's a scary thing to dabble and hide it. Like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. I was an addict. I was a father. I was a driver. So much stuff going on. It was bound to fall apart, and untreated mental health issues. And I had to experience all this stuff the hard way, and that's why I do my podcast now, our podcast, to spread the word that help is out there. Go get it.
Absolutely.
before it's either too late, or you're so banged up like me. It's I found the help years after I should have. I would these things have happened if I was on Suboxone legit, if I was properly medicated for mental health and speaking to my therapist? None of that. I was trying to hide it and doing a terrible job of it, and it only ends one way when you're doing that. It ends with jails, institutions, or death.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't really even know. I'm going to say when I opened my intensive outpatient program, planning that was in 2017. So we're talking about almost 10 years ago. And at the end of the day, like, at that time, people didn't know what intensive outpatient was. There wasn't a lot of talk out there, really, even until COVID. I think COVID, like, sort of perpetuated this huge response of suicide awareness and the opioid epidemic. I know back in like 2017, I think President Trump at the time put out a big opioid epidemic statement, and there was funding that was released.
Yep.
But yet it really wasn't talked about even then. And I don't think it was really fully talked about until post-COVID. And then when, I was trying to teach fentanyl awareness in emergency departments in 2015, which is exactly 10 years ago.
Yep.
And then the fentanyl conversation didn't come to light really until around 2018, 2019. And now we're talking about other huge streams of drugs polluting. There is no heroin. It's fentanyl. And the big topic right now is xylazine.
And in Philadelphia, in Kensington in particular, the addicts are looking for the xylazine.
No,
now.
They're all looking for the xylazine.
You know what block to go down, but my experience in Philly, and that was my bottom. My experience there was I was seeking out fentanyl. Right, that sounds crazy, but I was that guy died off of that bag. I need that bag.
Right.
He just couldn't handle it. I can handle it.
Yeah. For our listeners, guys, I know that might sound crazy, depending on either you are maybe a family member of someone with substance use disorder or just listening for the fun of it. If you're a person in long-term recovery, you probably understand it, depending on what your drug of choice was. But I just want to say, to understand why we say they're seeking that out, I think to speak to the xylazine issue is that xylazine specifically is tranq, which is a veterinary tranquilizer. It elongates the high of fentanyl. They can use less needles and be more high, so they're not having to expend the needles. They're high longer. But the problem is it actually tamps down the respiratory system so much that they die, and then it's not responding to Narcan.
Narcan doesn't work on it.
And so if you're a person that's working in the healthcare industry, you work for EMS, you're an ER doc, you're someone that might come into contact with someone who's used xylazine, understand you keep Narcaning, but the number one thing until you can get that person intubated is you have to breathe for them. So you keep those breaths going. Oxygen is super important. Breath. You just keep breathing for them. That's the latest that I learned at the GSAM conference in Savannah, Georgia, which is the Georgia Society of Addiction Medicine medical conference. They specifically talked about the emergency care for someone who's used xylazine and how to treat it. So that's just the latest I know about that. And then in terms of a fentanyl overdose, of course, Narcan is huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Understand, again, heroin is not out there. This is all fentanyl, guys.
Yep. And think about this. When I went to rehab from Kensington. I had them pick me up, take me to rehab. I did 2 drugs. I failed for 8. Everything. That's how much was in what I thought was a heroin bag.
What was infiltrated into the heroin.
Yeah, so I failed for everything but heroin. I failed for fentanyl, didn't fail for heroin. So it seems crazy, but it turns into a lifestyle almost. It turns into in rehab, out of rehab, getting high, sober house, back in rehab, now I'm high. It's like this cycle that ends in death unless you cut it off at some point. You need extra help. You only have... Yeah, I was on my 9th live, like I had one last chance. I knew it was my last chance. I knew it was going to end up in death for me. And, I decided to live.
Was this the Christmas Eve?
That was part of it. You would think.
Can we talk about that?
Sure, absolutely.
I know I heard this on your Talking Trash episode at Christmas, but can we talk about being at the dinner table and actually overdosing in front of your family?
Sure. So I mean, I'm in the middle of that thing I just talked about, in rehab, out of rehab. At this point, I'm sober, 7 or 8 months, something like that.
Oh wow, that's great.
And I'm doing okay. It's still thinking about getting high and having, but I wasn't. And then it was Christmas Eve, and I went to Walgreens to pick something up, I don't know, a card or something, and I saw a guy I knew, and he was wasted, and we're talking, and I'm like, this guy's off, and he's like, hold on a second, you want a bag? He gave me 2 bags of heroin. So it's Christmas Eve. It wasn't heroin, it was fentanyl. So it's Christmas Eve, and I'm thinking, oh, let's enhance the holiday spirit here. Let's make things better and get a little bit high, like I used to.
And I'm going to pause right there because I'm going to guess that you've been sober for 7-8 months and you don't know your dose now.
Well, that's a good point. I don't know my dose. I sniffed a quarter of a bag. I stuck a bill in the bag, and I made sure that it was just a quarter of the substance and I wake up sitting on my toilet with EMS everywhere, and my favorite shirt cut open. I'm like, what the hell happened? I couldn't imagine that what I did, that little bit of fentanyl,
that little tiny dusting,
took me out. And I was shooting heroin 8 months earlier. I was shooting 8 bags, and I did not think a quarter of a bag would take me out at all. So it's Christmas Eve, and my dad hears me fall, and he goes over to the bathroom door, and he tries to open it. He can't because I'm against the door. My dad's a 78-year-old man. He's like, it was bad. He called EMS. He said he tried to breathe for me. He's an anesthesiologist, so he had whatever apparatus he needed, and he was trying to get it in my throat and breathe for me, and he couldn't do it for whatever reason. He says, I was so blue, I was black, and I was dead out. I mean, this is 15 minutes, I'm like this. EMS comes, they take my dad out of the room. Apparently they're hitting me with Narcan. I'm not coming out, and my dad comes up to the door and says, is he up yet? And they said, nope. And my dad recalls this story and needs to stop. He can't say the words, and then he gets to it and he says, he's done, he's dead. And he knew he was positive I was dead. And then they gave me my 3rd shot of Narcan. My dad's like, he popped right up, like everything was normal. And
Well, that's not funny. I mean, I'm literally sitting here with tears in my eyes, knowing who your dad is and thinking about what that meant for him in that moment. But that's the glory of Narcan in my mind, because before I was a nurse, I was a paramedic. I don't know if you know that about me.
That,
And so I have popped somebody with Narcan and have them come up swinging at me.
Oh yeah.
So
that happens.
because they do not appreciate
that
it.
happens.
For sure.
The crazy part about that story is, it was Christmas Eve. My mom went to church to like a rehearsal for the service, and I overdosed after that. So we never went to church. By the time my mom came home, everything was normal. The cul-de-sac isn't filled with fire engines and cops, and it all just happened in this period where my mom comes home. She's like, "Why didn't you guys come?" "Oh, Timmy overdosed." Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Timmy overdosed.
Like, and that's almost like a normal thing. Oh, he's okay.
He's okay now.
Okay, all
let's
right.
have dinner.
Yeah, let's go to grandma's. And I drove to grandma. They gave me the keys. I drove to grandma's house. You know, like, it's insanity.
That's surreal.
It's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over,
expecting a different outcome.
Yep. And that was a turning point for me. So a month after that, I ended up moving in with my girlfriend, and, you know, terrible decision after terrible decision. 38 years old, 39 years old, 40 years old. I'm making all these terrible decisions, and it's amazing I'm alive. It really is. I've overdosed a number of times by myself, and that was just called falling asleep. You know, somehow I whatever
came out of it,
or God saved me. I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna say God saved you.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in that you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to be doing your podcast. You're supposed to be saving lives every day, because that's what you do. In your Clean Time segment, we'll talk about that in a minute. I do want to go back. You and I had an interesting conversation on episode 71 of Talkin Trash podcast about kratom.
Yeah.
And it was something you turned to at a time you thought you were sober.
Yeah, I thought I was sober.
And guys, like, kratom is a synthetic opioid that's being sold in gas stations and vaping shops all over the United States, probably Europe. I would say. I've never been to Europe, but
I'm sure.
You know, I would say I'm being told, I've interviewed a couple of gas station attendants, and they've been telling me, I had a girl bring down a vial from behind the counter, and she showed me this vial, and she said, "This vial is $120. It was a tiny vial. It looked like maybe a vial of like Ozempic or something, a little tiny vial.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, "Yeah, this vial is like $120, and this is what people are asking for." But they are only showing the powder kratom and the pills and the it's being sold for like sexual performance, weight loss, anxiety. I mean, you name it, they're marketing it for all these reasons.
I mean, there's so many different kinds of kratom.
How did you hear about kratom, and why did you choose to use it?
I was trying to be sober and fighting every day. You know, I wasn't working a program. I wasn't engaged in my sobriety. Thank you. And you know, I was a passenger in my own life, like I said, and I was always looking for that thing to fill a void that I had. So I was living in a sober house. Definitely couldn't use, or I didn't think kratom was using, but it was. And you know, I thought I beat the system. I found a legal way to be sober. You know, I went through a gamut of testing kratom. I bought every different kind there was.
Like every strain?
Yeah, just to see which one was better than the other. I finally hit. I found one that it made it really high. Like my head is floating above my body, and that's shocking to me that I'm like that from a product at a gas station. And
right.
So like that became an addiction, and that is not a cheap addiction.
No, she said it was very expensive, actually.
I mean, I was looking at like $50 a day. Like that's a lot of money for a guy in a sober house on disability. Like,
yeah, and I go to like the Southern Nutrition tea shop by my office, and it's $8 for a tea, and I have to tell myself, like, okay, you get 2 teas a week, because that's $16. So $50 a day, that's a lot.
Up to 50. Like if I could, you know, but I found a very certain brand and became very addicted to it very quick. Living in a sober living house, so like I think I'm fooling everybody again. And then there's that fear of exposure, you
So
know?
what happens on a drug test with the kratom that you were on? Do you test positive for
I
anything?
test positive. It was like a Christmas tree.
Oh my gosh. So guys, listeners, are you hearing this? If you do kratom from a gas station, you're failing your drug test. Mm-hmm. Don't do it.
Without a doubt. It's like I said, it's expensive, and if you're in early recovery, like people, there's people who justify using it. It makes you feel better. It's like Suboxone. It helps you. And it's just another addiction,
No,
and you
it's
don't know
not.
what you're taking. You just
Well, I want to challenge everybody to understand that there is a herbal substance behind every chemical drug that the pharmacology industry makes. So pharmaceutical industry is making drugs. Is that me? Sorry, guys, that was my phone.
Okay.
Oh, no, that was our producer, Sean Clyde. Stop it, Sean.
What do you go, Sean?
Anyway, so he's on the hook. At the end of the day, like chemical drugs in the pharmacology industry are made from the herbs and actually animal venom, snake venom, you name it. It's made and produced from something natural. Mm-hmm. And just because they are marketing this in a natural product, it's not been produced into a chemical pharmacology product, doesn't mean it's okay. And you don't know what it's doing to your heart, your liver, to your addictive properties in your brain. Yeah. Like you have no idea what that product is. And so I'll give you another product. And this might be news to our listeners, but there is a product that you can buy anywhere, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart. Mm-hmm. It's called Kava Kava. And in China, that is basically, you can't buy it there because it is a very addictive benzodiazepine. So those things like Ativan, Klonopin, Xanax, that is the base ingredient for a benzodiazepine, and you can buy that anywhere. So,
save that real quick.
Right. Let me save that. I took Kava Kava at a time in my life where I just read on the label that it said, helps with mood stabilization. Yeah. And I was like, oh, great, And so I took it, and I took it for about like 2 years. And then I read that article from China that said, this is a addictive property. And so I tried to stop taking it, and I got very sick. Yeah. So I realized, I had to taper off of it. Yeah. And at that time, I wasn't a nurse yet. I was really young, and I was a young mother, and I was trying to deal probably with some postpartum and whatnot. But, having been a person that just went into not a gas station, but like a Walgreens and bought something that said it would help me with my mood. Yeah. I thought there was something wrong with me. So, okay, I'll just take this herb. It'll make me better. Yep. Now, granted, it did help me. Sure. But I didn't know it was an addictive property.
Until you stop.
So lately I've been doing this deep dive. I've been going into the gas stations, looking at the different types of kratom. And so it made me remember that issue with the Kava Kava. Yeah. And I thought, I bet that's not available anymore. And I went over here to the Walgreens. I went in, and sure enough, it's still there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I mean, it's literally like I'm probably giving people ideas. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do what she's telling you.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, don't get into trouble with the herbal, non-FDA approved substances that say it can help you with mood stabilization. Go see a professional.
The withdrawal I find interesting because benzodiazepine withdrawal is really bad. It's dangerous.
One of the most dangerous. It's up there with alcohol. Clinical opioid withdrawal syndrome is, believe it or not as dangerous.
I know.
It's not fun for you. No. It's not a fun time. I mean, you're going to be sick. You're probably going to throw up and not feel good and have what we call the bends, where you're bent over with your tummy. But benzodiazepine withdrawal as well as alcohol withdrawal are the two most dangerous.
Yeah, they can kill you.
Yeah, it'll kill you. Yeah, for sure.
And I've seen it. And so, like the last 4 years, I worked in rehabs. I've bounced around. Now I'm divorced. Now I'm an animal. Like, I'm looking for girls, I'm not going to AA meetings and picking out, like.
Oh, I hear that's a thing.
This is the first time in my life I'm free,
Yeah.
I'm free to do whatever I want. It's over.
But now you can do it the right way.
But that's right. So now I'm not seeking anything out. I've decided 18 months ago that I'm going to treat my mental health the right way, and then I'm going to treat my addiction the right way.
That's so good.
And yeah, I'm not chasing girls. I was just replacing one addiction for another, you know?
Yeah, I've heard that. I have a friend, and of course I can't call that person out, but like I think that person has replaced this addiction over here to opioids to sex addiction.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And that's still an addiction.
Yeah.
So you guys said it the best way is that being clean from a drug doesn't mean you're recovered.
Right. You're going to relapse. If you're just clean, holding on, I promise you're going to relapse. And that may start with Kratom. That may start with something from the gas station.
Yeah.
If you're seeking out something like Kratom, you're looking for your high. You're looking for that thing that you've chased for so long.
Yeah.
So that I don't know if gateway or whatever it is. It's a path that leads you back to where your drug of choice. You're going to end up going back to heroin or whatever, and you're going to end up doing the same consequences that come with that. I finally got to a place where I was like, I'm tired of getting beat up. I'm tired of living. Period. This sucks. I just don't want to do it anymore. So I finally gave in and took the suggestions. I talked to my therapists. Honestly, I let them therapize me instead of,
That's a new term, therapize.
Yeah, I trademarked that. So I finally just stopped. Tim was in control for so long, and it ended up with Tim in a hole where I couldn't get out of by myself. I needed help. So I finally asked for it, and I humbled myself to the point where, like, I'm not okay. I need outside.
Jelly roll.
Right. So I'm all right now, but like it took I'm on maintenance now. I had to have it takes.
So you're on MAT?
Yeah, I'm on Suboxone.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't see it as there's a paradigm shift in recovery now. Rehabs and detoxes and dual diagnosis and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's always a dual diagnosis, whether they're dual diagnosed or not.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So it is it's a scary thing to think
Sean, do not take away his gulping of water. I want that left in all day. I love it.
I get dry mouth sometimes, so I got to keep her going. I'm not very professional either. I tell everybody, I'm like, I don't know why I'm the character on a podcast because I can't stand myself, but I have to play that role because I have to give back. Like part of my recovery, and not just sobriety. Finally, I'm in recovery. That means I'm dealing with my mental health. That means I'm dealing with my personal relationships, life. Now when I think about getting high, I don't think about the fleeting moments of getting high. I think about the disaster that comes behind it.
That's so good.
And that's I don't know.
I think the humor that I work around a lot of you folks that are in long-term recovery. It's like the life that I live. So the people that surround me in my building are all in recovery, except for maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 of us. Yeah. But the majority. Yeah. So I'm going to say like 60% of the people in the building are in long-term recovery. And the jokes that you folks make, I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. That's the common theme. Yeah. It's. I love it, and you have to have the humor and know that you are now behind that.
Yeah, it's huge for me. I want to be authentic and laugh and not force it.
Well, I love it that you guys are real and raw on the Talking Trash podcast. That's Talkin with not a G on the end. It's just Talkin with the IN, Trash podcast with Tim Snyder. You can look it up anywhere you hear your podcast, man. I'm telling you, they do talk some trash. They're not afraid to cuss. I'm over here with a government-funded podcast, so we have to keep it rated G all day. I'm hoping one day, we'll be able to give it a little bit more raw and real feel when it's not a HRSA-funded access to.
Well, you're PBS and we're HBO.
We're definitely PBS. You are definitely HBO. I loved getting to be on there. I still kept it rated G, but...
You were great. I have a couple of emails came from that.
You'll have to send them to me.
I'll read them. Elizabeth was fantastic. You can tell she really cares, and we need more people like her in addiction recovery. I'm myself a nurse in a rehab, and so few people really care the way she does. She was transparent, she was genuine and authentic. Please have her back on Megan C. So like,
Oh, thanks, Megan C.
you
That's
know,
so awesome. I appreciate that.
we're reaching an audience that they need this kind of stuff. You know, they need to feel okay.
Well, one thing that our podcast is probably going to do is be a part of what's called impact therapy in crisis stabilization units.
Yep.
For folks that are actually in crisis, they're there to get clean. And it is a way in their therapy sessions to hear other stories of people that have been right where they are, that have been incarcerated, that have failed and failed multiple times and have figured out how to do it and get there.
It's an impactful thing to know you're not alone. Like they went through it too. Like it's freeing. It lets you feel like you're okay because that guy made it and he's got my story, and it's just it's a therapy. It's an impactful thing to realize you're not alone. I always felt alone in a room full of people, but now I know the people in that room are struggling just as I am, and you know it's powerful. It's important.
It is powerful. So Tim, I want you to wrap up here with a little bit about your podcast, how to find it, and what the messages that you guys with our fun Mike Oxley, the LPN.
Yeah. I mean, we got a great cast. Last night we had 5 people on. It's our new panel.
Cool.
We're expanding a little bit. But Mike is a addiction recovery nurse. Jim Leibel is from Canada in Saskatchewan. He's another co-host of ours. He's got 5 years clean.
Nice.
Friend of mine, Kaisa. She's from Houston, Texas.
I have her phone number. I'm going to be calling her.
She's phenomenal. She's a great presence on the show. And then my friend Will Douglas from Ranger, Georgia, whatever. He's a good guy. He's homosexual and he's funny, and we cover all the demographics. Everybody's got something to share.
That's awesome. I'm
just steering the ship. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like to listen to myself. I don't like to hear it, but like, yeah. So Talkin Trash podcast. It's on everything. Type in Talkin Trash Addiction or Trash Addiction. You'll find us. Our website ties it all together, trash-podcast.com. So.
Thank you. Well, my gosh. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Tim. You are an awesome dude, and I enjoy being on your podcast. Thank you for doing a pod swap with me.
Do it again.
And yeah, let's do it again. Love it. And thank you guys for listening to the Clearly Well podcast. Check us out on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. Also, if you or someone you know would like to come on the podcast, please email us at clearlywellpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in.